While working on my backyard scale crawler course, I wanted to add some smaller scale items, and I decided to come up with a ladder. So today I'm going to show you how I make these ladders. So here's what you're going to need to make a ladder. This is a 1/8 inch round dowel rod. This is a 1/4 inch square dowel. 2 drill bits. I start off with a 1/16 and finish off with a 1/8. Need a pencil, tape measure, drill, wood glue. This is Titebond 2. I like using the Titebond 2 because it's interior exterior. You can use Elmer's wood glue, but this seems to be a little bit better. And you're going to need a saw. This is a 6-inch coping saw. And if you can see, there's really fine teeth on it. I think it's 16 or 17 teeth per inch. The finer the teeth, the smoother cut you're going to get. And this seems to work pretty well for the smaller detail stuff. And optional items are some clamps, scrap piece of wood, and some sandpaper. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do is figure out how tall you want your ladder. Either how tall scale wise or just overall how tall. Now this piece right here I have left over 16 inches, so I'm just going to divide it in two. Put a mark right here at 8 inches. And take my saw, cut it off at 8 inches. Now this is where your scrap piece of lumber will come in handy. If you put your square peg on top of it when you do your cutting, it'll give it a smoother cut on the back side of the cut. It won't splinter off as much usually. So we have our two pieces of equal length. Now the edges on them are quite square. Now I'm going for a rustic look, so square edges aren't going to do me any good. I want to look old and weathered. So I'm going to take my sandpaper. This is 120 grit. You can go whatever you have on hand. This stuff is pretty light. And what I do is I just round off the edges. And don't forget to do the ends of them too. Now once you got everything sanded off, we're going to start on the spacing for the ladder rungs. Now OSHA says your steps on a ladder should be no more than 14 inches and no less than 10 inches. So in scale, that's about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. So we're just going to go for about 1.25 inches. So every 1.25 inches on here, I'm going to put a dot. I'm going to try to put that dot in the middle as best I can. And that will be where we're going to do the drilling for the ladder rungs. Now that we got our marks made for the ladder rungs, this is where your clamps come in play. Take your two side pieces of your ladder. Get them evened up with each other. Now take your clamp, clamp them together. You can use tape, painter's tape, or probably clear tape, whatever you got on hand to use. Tape them, clamp them together. Now doing so, when I drill through one, it's going to drill through both of them at the same time. That way my ladder rungs will match up with each other. Now I'm going to start out with my 1/16 inch drill bit. You don't have to, you can just go straight up with the 1/8, but I'm going to start out with the 1/16. Just makes it a little bit smoother holes usually. Now I'm going to go back through these holes with my larger 1/8 bit. Now when I do go through, I'm going to wall it out just a little bit. I'm going to round it off a little bit, just to give a little more room for the dowel rod to go in and for the glue. Now that I got all the holes drilled, I'll take a little of this 220 grit sandpaper I got. Just get rid of some of the burrs on here, around the holes. Now we're going to work on the ladder rungs themselves. I'm going to go for about 1.5 inch spacing on these. So every 1.5 inches I'm going to cut. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on these 6 pieces, 1.5 inches long. So make marks and cut. Gonna use my spare block of wood here. And the coping saw again. Now the round dowel rod wants to jump around a little bit, so you gotta get your finger a little close to it, where you need to cut at. Gotta be real careful you don't get your finger too close to it, because this will cut your finger. Don't want to get in much of a hurry. If it binds up on you, just back off of it. And there you go. You can probably cut this with the X-Acto knife, it's not real thick. But I'm going to do this 5 more times, and then we'll have all of our ladder rungs. Now that we got all of our 6 rungs cut, sometimes they don't give you a very clean cut. So I take my sandpaper, and I'm just going to clean off the edges of them. Now that we have all of our ladder rungs cleaned up, take some of the glue. I'm just going to squeeze out a little bit here on this old scrap piece of wood. What I'm going to do is take each edge, each end of it actually, just put a little bit on each end. If you want to wear gloves, you can. This glue cleans up pretty easily on your fingers. Now I'm going to take the ladder side, put it against my flat piece of wood here, pushing my dowel rod till it stops. Now complete this all the way down the line. Now that I've got all the rungs put on one side, take the opposite side, line them up, and fill them together. Now this is usually the trickiest part, because sometimes they're not drilled square. Kind of got to fight with them sometimes, but just take your time and it'll work its way out. Then once you got them lined up, press down a little bit on your board. Alright, now we're starting to look like a ladder. Now sometimes your ladder rungs come out just a little bit further than they should, and that's no problem. You just take your sandpaper and give it a little bit of cleanup. Smooth it off. If that's up to you. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Like I said, this is just a rustic looking ladder, and it's not going to be perfect. In fact, I don't want it to look perfect. So if you want to do some more rustification, you can sand some more places than others. Make it look like it's been beat up, and whatever you want to do with it. I mean, you can break off one of the rungs, make it look like it's broken. Let your imagination run wild with it. Do what you want to do with it. Now you could just leave it at this. You could let nature weather itself out. This is the one we just got done. This is the one I did a couple days ago. It's a little bit longer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this Valspar semi-transparent stain. It's an exterior stain. Color is Bella Portobello. Give me a little 1-inch foam brush, and I'm gonna put this exterior stain on it. And this exterior stain will protect the wood from rotting and fading off, and give a little bit better color. And I'm just going to give it a good liberal coating on all the surfaces of it. Try to get all the nooks and crannies of it as best you can. You might want to wear gloves for this, because sometimes this stain doesn't come off very easily on your fingers. It's no big deal. A little rubbing alcohol, take it off, catch it before it dries. Also, make sure you get the ends of it. A lot of people forget to do the ends. And the ends is where it's going to soak up the most moisture at. You want to seal those off. Now, once I got it on there, I'm going to dry my brush off a little bit, my foam brush here. I'm just going to wipe off all the excess off of it. So in less than 4 or 5 minutes, we went from this to this. I'm gonna let this dry, and then I'm gonna put some of this semi-solid Cabot stain. This is a Cordovan brown. I'm gonna put some on the edges, some around the rungs, give it a little more weathered look. So now that the stain is dry on this one, I'm gonna take some of this Cabot Cordovan brown. Just get a little bit. This is a semi-solid. It's a little more less transparent than the other stain. And I'm just going to add a little bit of touch-up here and there to it. On the ladder rungs, you know, where they would see the most use at. Make it a little more weathered looking. You know, you don't have to do this. It's just something I've kind of thought about doing afterwards. You know, give it some dark look down there by the feet where it's been sitting in the dirt or whatever. Also gives a little more protection. Try to make it look as natural looking as you can. Kind of make it look like where they've been walking up and using their dirty hands on the ladder. Do a little bit on the side, this side too. Make sure I get the tops of the rungs. Just a little extra. Like I said, this ain't gotta be perfect. We don't want perfect with this. Actually, we want it to be looking naturally weathered, I guess you'd say, or naturally used. I don't want to go overboard with it, but give it enough to know it's there. So it's been about a day since I let the stain and everything dry on. This is the first one I built, and that's the second one I built on camera here. Now the first one we used that light color stain, and then did some little touch-ups around the side and around the rungs of the ladder. And the second one I built, I actually kind of mixed the two stains together and just played around with it, and it turned out pretty well. I actually like this one a little bit better. Than this one. But I think they'll get the job done, and you can definitely tell those are two ladders. Appreciate y'all watching. We'll see you next time.